Larry Feldman is probably the most amazing trainer that I've ever experienced in this business. I've been in the car business now for 35 years, and I've seen quite a few trainers. And a lot of them are pretty good. I mean, really, I get something out of all of them that I've seen, really. But Larry is in another class. I really mean that. His training is literally riveting. A little while back, I sat in on his first training that I ever sat in on. It was for new hires. I still remember, I'll never forget it. About 25 people in the room who'd never sold cars before. And he started to do his training. And after 2 hours, I was in the back of the room and I raised my hand meekly and Larry stopped what he was doing and said, yes. And I said, maybe we should take a break. And literally, I'll never forget it. All 25 people turned around, looked at me and went, well, okay. And they turned back to Larry. And Larry looked at me and goes, okay. And he kept going for another 2 hours.
Hello there, this is Ian Nethercott, still recovering from my throat challenge. Hopefully I'm better by NADA later this week, or next week, sorry. And this is the live one-on-one interview show. I have a very good guest this morning to talk about the car business and also marketing and other things. It's Braden from Dealer Surge. If you're going to be at NADA, I'll be at the Velo booth number 835. I am pretty booked, but I can probably squeeze you in for one of our ambush interviews. Just drop by and we'll see what we can do. So, Braden, tell us how you got in the car business, why you got in the car business, and give us some details.
Ian, well, thank you so much for having me. Really excited and honored to be on the show. Appreciate it. Built an awesome community here. So my story goes back 11 years ago when I was 16 and I walked into a dealership to buy my first vehicle. And it was an independent premium store. There was a Jeep Wrangler that I wanted. And I had started a marketing company during high school, and I wanted to work in the car business. And the dealer principal got word that a young guy was looking at a Jeep, and he has a film company. And we ended up starting a great relationship. And Scott, that gentleman, the owner of that dealership, is still my mentor 10 years, 11 years later. And that just sparked this whole fascination with one day running dealerships and seeing how they operate and how to improve them and marketing. So that's where we're now at. So fast forward 11 years, advertising for franchise dealers across North America and now AI agents.
Fantastic. Well, I've been in the car business myself for 25 years, so I actually have a family history, but I got selling cars
Yeah.
because I was a fan of Honda at the time. Not that I
Mhm.
wasn't a fan of other brands, but that was the brand I was exposed to. And I wanted to work at a car dealership. So I went in my local car dealership that I'd bought a car from, and I said, I want to work here. He goes, no, you don't. I go, what do you mean? He goes, like, well, think about it. Come back and see me. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? So then I came back a week later. He goes, okay, you still don't want to do this. Like, it's not something you want to. I'm like, yeah, like you told me to think about it. I came back. So I came back and he says, okay, now what I want you to do is drive every single car that we make, and then I'm going to test you on what you know about it. I'm like, what? So fast forward 25 years later, I worked retail for 10 years, but my background is in marketing and sales, but I also have an MBA from Queens and Cornell. But I had a fascination from cars from a very young age, probably because my grandfather, father, and uncle and cousin work in the business.
Hmm.
Ironically, my older brother told me when I got in the car business, it was a bad idea. He's like, yeah, that's a bad business. I'm like, what do you mean a bad business? What are you talking about? So it's definitely an interesting business. But when you look at marketing and you look at business models and you look at AI, we did a show earlier last year called the AIO show, and I'm
Hmm.
excited to see the AI spin at NADA next week. But what is your feeling on AI in the car business? Because I know there's a lot of fear around it, but
Yep.
more importantly, how did you jump from marketing to AI?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, if we go back and we look at the rise of the internet, and I know I was barely walking at that time.
Mhm.
I'm aging myself here, but we hear dealers even in today's world talk about when they reflect on the time when internet was coming around, people thought it was the devil, right? They thought it was the worst thing. It was going to ruin the industry. They weren't going to sell cars. And then when they adopted it, they started seeing record numbers, doubling sales, all these amazing things. And right now, if we look at agentic architecture, which is AI employees being
Yeah,
able to do complex tasks and automate things, this is Internet 2.0. And this isn't just for the car industry. This is getting your coffee at Starbucks or McDonald's, order taking, reservations. This is health and travel insurance. This is every online communication and phone conversation that you're going to have with a business. So when we're marketing dealerships, we look at it kind of like a bucket of water, right? That's your dealership. And when dealers ask to spend more money on ad spend, they're really just wanting more leads, which are leading to more sales. But the issue is there's holes in the bucket, and that's operational problems, not marketing problems. So,
Right.
you're in the business, speed to lead, that's important. But when you dive into call connect rates and call tracking software, the average dealership misses 30% of their phone calls. And only 11% of the time is customer information collected. So
Right.
dealers are spending more and more money online while trying to get more business when the hottest leads possible are calling the dealership trying to buy or book an appointment. So
Oh, 100%.
that's what we're trying to fix.
Yeah, I mean, I managed a BDC for internet leads at a Honda store, one of the biggest in the country, in Richmond, BC, near Vancouver. I set
Hmm.
up call centers for dealers in sales and service all over North America. Very familiar with that. I've worked for a website company in automotive, trying to enhance lead capture and experience. I have a regular guest on the show called from a company called A to Z Sync that's
Hmm.
just recently partnered with Amazon Auto. So there's going to be a lot of change there. But really, I guess the scary statistic from a dealer website, and pick your website, even though I've looked at about 40,000, I worked for a website company for 3 years. And I
Yeah.
had a website company in 1997 when people told me it was a fad. So I'm
Hmm.
pretty familiar with websites. The biggest challenge on websites, and you talk about phone calls, which is one area that dealers can, reach people can reach out to a dealership, and generally it's the following. So you have a phone number, sometimes you
Hmm.
have a fax number, which is scary, lead form, pop-up engager, or some form of form to capture information, and then you have a chat bot of some type, whether it be a person or an automated piece, where the goal is really to capture information. The big challenge with all those things is there's really very few dealers that actually can help the customer right away.
Right.
So even if they have a phone number, which a lot of them do, and I trained call centers and salespeople on how to use a telephone years ago, whether it's one of these devices, pick your poison, or whether it's an old school telephone. The biggest challenge is call volume
Hmm.
and a lack of skills on the phone. Now, what's happening as we move into 2025, and for pure transparency, one of the sponsors of the show is a company called VidCalls that can do a two-way video call with customers,
Hmm.
not only in English, but we're going to be doing that in multiple languages in February. The difference with that is it gives people another option. So people want help right now, but what most dealers do, to your point, is they advertise a lot. They increase their inbound, whether it be phone calls or email or lead forms or whatever, or they buy leads, and then they can't follow through with those because they don't have a process. And I always use the example of subprime, not to jump from one topic to another, but
Hmm.
subprime dealers in North America spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a month to buy leads or generate them. And then they tend to have about a 93% rate of can't get it done. So about
Yes.
7% of those leads may turn into a customer. But when you look at an automotive website, and this is some metrics from my background, the average automotive website converts somewhere between 1 and maybe as high as 5% of their traffic to a lead in some way. So that may
Hmm.
be a phone call for sales, service, or parts, or F&I. It may be a finance app. It may be a lead form. But basically, most of that traffic is telling you they don't like the experience.
Right.
They're saying, "Hey, it sucks. I'm going to go somewhere else," or
Absolutely.
they're putting leads on 6 websites and then they forget what website it was. So basically, what happens is then you're chasing that lead, which that most dealers do, but they don't do it properly. So what's interesting when you look at Amazon or eBay Motors or Carvana or in Canada Clutch is they're all trying to make that digital retail piece work.
Hmm.
What they haven't done, and it'd be interesting to see what Amazon does at NDA, is they're not really making it possible for that customer to get help during the process in real time. They're
Yes.
basically hoping to go down that funnel in a certain way, and then maybe that works and maybe it doesn't. I mean, I had a discussion the other day with someone about automation with video, specifically on LinkedIn, to have like a virtual sales agent, I think is what they were doing. And I said, okay, but what if that virtual sales agent has a problem? They said, what do you mean? What if it offends people at scale? Like, what does that do? So I'm not saying AI isn't interesting. If you look at companies like Stella.ai or Numa.ai, or there's a couple other ones, I think the process is good and definitely getting better,
Yep.
especially when they focus on just say service calls, which is a massive problem. Because what do people do when they drop off their car at service? They call you every 5 minutes. Is it done yet? Is it done yet? Is it done yet? Is it done yet?
Hmm.
And people can't answer those calls even if they have a BDC very well. And I actually worked for a company years ago that trained service reps called DRFX out of Toronto. That's now owned by
Yep.
Snap. But if I'm a dealer and putting my dealer hat on now, I'm going, okay, I got 100 people in my building. I got 8 to 10 of the best quality salespeople I could train or find. I've got 4 to 5 service writers. Maybe I got 1 or 2 business managers, and I got some managers who like to drink a lot of coffee and maybe not do much else. The biggest complaint that the dealer tends to have, and I talk to a lot of dealers all the time, is okay, like I'm happy to invest money, but what I want is efficiency and consistency because the
Hmm.
factory shows up and they go, okay, we don't like the carpet, we don't like the drapes, we don't like the tiles, we want you to light the car in a certain way, and we want you to get 100% on every survey, but they don't know how to do that. So the dealer blows back and says, okay, well, thanks for coming into my store and telling me how to spend money making it fancier. But what I need is people that can do a job and help as many customers as possible. So let's just say,
Yes.
for example, you're helping a dealer with lead process or website or marketing. How do you blend AI into that? Like, how does that work? Like, what's your process?
This is my favorite conversation. There's a lot to this. so,
Yes.
so there's a lot of processes that are going to be improved through AI, and there's different levels to it, right? There's
Yeah.
chatbots, there's AI receptionists that we build, AI employees for BDC, service department booking, all these things. But
Yep.
let's look at the customer experience.
Yep.
Um, when we started building these AI employees into dealerships and testing them, I mean, dealers were a little skeptical. They're like, hey, this is the future, but let's try it, right? Let's work on it. Um, the number one question that our team and the dealer had is how is the customer going to react to it? And if we look at the data of almost every single dealership, 30% of the calls don't get picked up. About 30 to 40% of the people that get put on hold hang up the phone and they
Yep.
call elsewhere. They never call back,
Yep.
right? So just that alone, if you do pick up the phone call, it's usually a bad experience for the customer.
Yep.
If we can collect 100% of customer information and we design the perfect AI employee, excuse me, that will basically write down every detail about the call, the caller, their contact
Yep.
info, analyze the call, put it into your CRM, book that appointment, give you analytics based on that caller that dealers have never had before.
Yep.
You help the customer have a better experience online. Now let's look at in person. When somebody walks into the service department or on the sales floor and they go to the receptionist, what's that customer's usual first experience? It's usually the receptionist is on the phone and, waves hello, puts their finger up 1 second, talks to the customer. Oh, shoot, now another call's coming in. I'm going to put this customer on hold. All these different areas of friction create bad experiences, not only for your team, but your customers in person and online. So if we can automate processes that don't bring direct value or revenue to the dealership and allow humans to focus on other humans, it's an overall better experience for everybody.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because years ago when I was doing my MBA, a buddy of mine who worked for Kraft Foods, now
Hmm.
it's for a chocolate company, we were talking about the kiosks that they have at McDonald's and
Yeah.
everywhere else, these kiosks. And I know when they put these kiosks in, and I actually worked for a company called DRFX, and there's also other companies like Storm and others that do kiosks. But I asked him, I said, so do you, he happened to know the marketing director for Canada at McDonald's. So I said, well, there had to be a lot of fear because you had these cashiers at McDonald's years ago. They still have some, but they had a lot of them where basically people would come up and they'd order whatever. And now it was like a process where it's like they got to order this way. And I said, well, what was the side effect of that from a point of view of staffing and revenue and everything else? And he had a really interesting thought process. So he said, well, part of the problem with cashiers, which generally are age driven, so
Hmm.
people that are older will go to them no matter what, if that's an option. Very similar to probably a grocery store, for example. But he said what they found when they put these kiosks in is not only the kiosk could make it like Amazon where you could add this and do that and whatever. People ordered more food, and the reason is they were ignoring the people behind them waiting. Because
Yes.
years ago, when they had the line, and service is a great example of this, they had the line, they thought they wanted to hurry up because they didn't want to inconvenience the person behind them, much like at a
Yep.
convenience store, I guess, or a gas station. But what was interesting was what they were able to do is repurpose employees. And there's actually a really interesting fast food restaurant near me here in Calgary that is kind of trying to do a vegan take on fast food.
Hmm.
And it's really interesting. I went in there and they have the same kiosk. It's a franchise, I think, out of Toronto. But they have the same kiosk you'd have at McDonald's, but they're doing a lot more with them because they have a lot more options.
Yep.
But what was interesting about it was the fact that the machine actually has enhanced the process. And like, whether you look at Storm or another kiosk, they're basically their basic model was to say, hey, we have this really technically savvy night drop box where we're closed, you just drop an envelope in and then we call you. And they were like, that's a problem. What if we had a kiosk to check people in? So it's
Yes.
really interesting that you look at that. So let's just say I'm a dealer, and shockingly, I don't want to pay more people to do their job. This is probably common with dealers, not
Hmm.
to pick any dealer specifically.
Yeah.
So when they add AI, and they're going to get blowback from the change police, I guess, of dealerships because they don't like
Yep.
change.
Yeah.
What is the upside for the dealer over time, and where do you start there? And what's the upside for the employee who maybe says, "Hey, the robots are coming, like iRobot, they're coming for my job," or the Tesla bot. The Tesla bot's going to replace me, and what am I going to do? And
Yeah. Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
just this is the automated checkout coming to car business,
Hmm.
basically.
Yep. So, I feel very uniquely inclined to talk about this. Years ago, my last real job, I'll say, other outside of entrepreneurship, was actually managing a McDonald's. In
Right?
high school, I was a student manager, and I was there when they installed those kiosks, when they started renovating the restaurants,
Yeah.
and they opened up a new position called the guest experience leader.
Okay.
And this is how I would love dealers to approach customer service because I've seen the impact it makes in not only the fast food industry but also other dealerships that are
Yeah.
doing this. If you have the receptionist now not spending 60 hours a month, which some of our stores do, 60 hours a month picking up the phone and putting customers on hold, that's 60 hours that individual can then create more value for the dealership in terms of revenue
Yeah.
or for the customers in terms of customer experience.
Yeah.
So, so we had a demo recently with our now client for the AI. I showed him, I did a live demo, just like you and I are doing right now over the phone, called the quote AI receptionist, and his jaw was on the floor. He didn't say a word. I'm like, well, what do you think? And he walks over, shuts his office door, and he goes, Braden, 1 hour ago, I just gave our receptionist employee of the month. And now I'm trying to figure out how I have to fire her. And I'm like, all right, funny to say that, but AI isn't to replace people, it's to provide extra efficiencies and make
Yeah.
them superheroes. So
Yeah.
that's what it's all about.
Yeah, because Telus is trying to do that now. It's funny. I have a 1-800 number that's a business line for my business,
Hmm.
and their website you used to be able to pay it on their website, and that's broken for some reason.
Yep.
They broke something, so they keep sending me these emails. You owe us money. So I tried to set up an automated payment. That didn't work. So then I called them, and they have an AI like Apple that tries to sort you into different buckets. So I eventually got to talk to a person, and they're like, "Well, what's the problem?" I said, "Your website's broken." They said, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, I'm trying to pay you. You keep sending me emails saying I should pay you. I want to do it, but you can't. You can't. Your system doesn't work." And they said, "Well, we'll get that looked into." I said, "Yeah, but you're going to keep sending me emails that are automated saying I got to pay you. Can't we
Hmm.
just handle the payment?" So eventually that got handled, but the thing that was interesting was I think Apple implemented this globally a number of years ago, because what the system would do is when you called, it had your phone number, it could pull up your record, so it knew who you were,
Yep.
and then it would filter you for you, basically. So I see that as kind of, where this is going. Like when you look at um, efficiency, would be the way I look at it. So if
Mhm.
I'm a person and I can pick up a phone and make 100 phone calls a day, which I think is a pretty high bar, but let's just say it's average. If I picked up a phone and I could do that with a lot more information, I'm
Yep.
not only more efficient, I can get better results from those phone calls. So if a
100%.
call's coming in for service, and before the service writer gets engaged, she's probably busy anyway.
Hmm.
They know a lot about what that problem is. They can not only solve it faster, they can provide a higher level of experience. And I used the example
Yes.
recently of, what is it, Sirius XM. So they're trying to get me to buy Sirius XM for my car, which I probably would never buy. But
Oh, they push hard too.
that they send you a piece of mail going, like, I don't know what it is. It's like $2 a month now or something stupid. And I'm like, upgrade your customer experience, and then you could upgrade what you charge. They haven't done that probably in 20 years. So the customer experience is just as bad as it was 20 years ago, but they think the solution is more marketing. The solution isn't more marketing. The solution
Not.
is maybe talk to customers who have bought as to why, and maybe talk to customers who haven't and say, listen, what content would make sense?
Yep.
Like you look at
Yep.
televisions. I mean, television is pretty much dead technology today. But instead of the Telus or Rogers or Comcast, pick the company, instead of them saying, okay, we got to sell a new type of television, they're still trying to flog the old thing. Like you've got to adapt, but more importantly, creating that best level customer experience is a moneymaker,
Hmm.
especially if somebody else isn't. So, for example, if I'm in Kelowna or Vancouver or Toronto or New York or wherever, Miami, and I have a choice of, say, 5 dealers in my region, and one of them has a better experience than the other ones, you're probably going to buy the car there, probably,
Yep.
because
Yep.
people are probably calling or emailing to see, I don't like buying a car, but which one is the best of the worst? Like,
Hmm.
like it sucks, but how can I have a better crappy experience? And that's part of the
Yes.
reason I got in the car business 25 years ago. Is the bar was so low. I was like, I got to be able to do better than that. Like if the bar's down here. So after you've implemented these solutions, what has been the feedback from dealers?
Yeah. So booking rate, our very first beta test at a big Stellantis store on the West Coast in California,
Okay.
um, 5,500 phone calls they received throughout their whole dealership. 5,500 phone calls in the month of September. Okay.
That,
3,300 of them they picked up, 2,200 of them they missed.
yeah.
Of those 2,200 calls that were missed, 1,800 of those were unique individual customers.
Yeah.
So that's the difference between those numbers, 400 people that called back, 1,800 of them did. So
Yeah.
they're down the street, gone to another dealership.
Yeah.
When we installed this AI, the reception part, there's a few different tools, but when we did the reception part for inbound third-party calls, so Car Gurus, Auto Trader, etc., booking rates went from 3% to 31%. It answered 100% of the calls, no matter when they called. It understood accents, it understood different languages. So it was a really, really good test. And now we have their whole group signing on, building systems out for their stores. So I want to go back, Ian. You made a really good point of like AI is not perfect, is what you're insinuating, and I'm going to say the same thing. It's not
Yeah.
perfect, but neither are humans, right? It's
No.
going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very scared of dealers who purchased AI products or are working on purchasing AI products that are plug and play. I really have this belief that if you buy an AI product, there should be an onboarding process that's longer than 1 day. You can't flip a switch and get an AI to follow every system and process and understand your dealership specifically. A lot of the models that people are selling right now are trained on overall automotive
Yeah.
knowledge. Is that important? Yes, absolutely. But if your provider isn't diving into your actual sales processes and how do you want the customer to react and what sales training do you want to give the bot? We need to look at these as actual human beings, same way you would onboard a receptionist, a salesperson, a sales manager. Whatever job you're giving this AI agent, it needs the same amount of training. It just doesn't forget those processes. It doesn't mess up, but you need to make sure it's trained correctly.
Yeah, I mean, one of our regular listeners slash guests on the show runs a group out of Arizona or New Mexico. It's a bunch of rooftops. And
Hmm.
last year at NADA, she bought a bunch of AI technology for the group. So she said, okay, we're going to buy a bunch of stuff and try it. And what
Yeah.
she found was a lot of the stuff she ended up canceling, not because it was necessarily bad product, but because the needs of the different stores in the groups and the experience level
Yep.
and what made sense for them was very different. So I guess my question there would be, let's just say I have 8 rooftops, or I got 25, or I got 100, or I got 500. It doesn't matter. Each brand is going to be different. Each store is going to be different. The culture may
Yep.
be different. What do you do? What do you suggest there? Like, how do they get started? They just start with one store and figure it out, and then go from there. How does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're working with a lot of groups, dozens of rooftops, some smaller ones as well, and independents. What we like to do is on our onboarding calls, we set up a call where we go through how do you want the customer to react? How do you want the AI to speak? Do we want to prioritize bookings for test drives? And if they get rejected and they say, no, I want more information, do we request a callback number or do we just transfer to the sales team? All these systems are so important and how they flow together. So we will launch that on like 5 phone lines. And then when it's perfected over the next couple weeks, every single call that comes in, our team is listening, learning, adapting the AI, adjusting the prompts, the architecture. And once that's ready, we release it across the dealership,
Okay,
right?
makes sense.
So, yeah. Yep.
So how do dealers get a demo? How do they reach out to you? The details will be below, by the way. Um, how do they reach out to you?
So dealersurge.ai is our AI product, and we have dealersurge.ca, which is the advertising. We're working on separating those a little bit, but dealersurge.ai. I post on LinkedIn 3 times a week. I'm on there as well, very active, and that's how we got connected. So thank you very much.
Yep.
And yeah, our demo, just book a demo and we'll give a rundown and how we can help. I mean, the reason I love this product is Ian, would love to own a dealer group one day. And in order for me to do that, I need to understand the biggest opportunities for change and how we can build technology to solve those problems. So when we can actually sit down with executives and dive in and even receptionists and talk about their problems and build these things out for each store, I think we can do a lot of positive damage for dealers and make a big dent in operational efficiencies, right?
Absolutely. So you don't want to be a shrink? Is that what you're saying?
Wow, we don't want to be a shrink. Yeah, I mean, we don't want a one size fits all product. I think that's very dangerous for dealers. So,
When I first started working with dealers 15, 16 years ago now, biggest mistake I made as a consultant was trying to solve all the problems in a dealership at once. And I think
mm,
that's the key lesson. What's the biggest opportunity to fix?
yep,
Let's fix that. Then let's look at other things. And that
yep,
roll forward 15 years. I'm focused right now on the sales side of the house, but we're going to be adding F&I parts, which is the holy grail, by the way, if you're not in auto,
yep,
and service. Because parts, it's almost a running joke. Parts can you hold? But there are some great companies in parts to help parts departments. They just don't get a lot of promotion. That's why I'm launching the Fixed Op show next month, because I think the parts side of the house and the service side of the house is kind of the different colored hair stepchild in a car dealer. It just people don't pay attention. And I think that's a big mistake, especially as we look at ownership terms getting longer, cars being more expensive, so people keeping cars longer. But more
mhm,
importantly, generational things. I think when you look at passion for cars, going across generations. It's not that younger generations don't like cars. It's just it's an expensive asset for them based on their usage.
yes.
So it's going to be interesting to see how that changes the model. I know we've had a lot of what I'd call flexible lease stuff happening, and then there's even some talk about automated driving. But I
Hmm.
appreciate the time today. If you are looking to bring AI into your dealership, not the iRobot kind, but AI in your dealership and make things happen, definitely reach out to Braden. And thanks for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Ian. This was fantastic. Appreciate the conversation. And for all the listeners, have a fantastic day.
Thanks.